Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Ray Donovan. A very, very good, very sad season premiere. It's a very interesting way of telling the story that has not come up so far in the show, and it's a time skip. It seems that basically Abby has died, and I kind of got that feeling at the beginning. Just the way Mickey was acting, it's like, oh, this is like I was like, okay, maybe it's the singer he was dating back in season 4. I was like, oh, maybe he's visiting his, the kid's mom, like Ray, Bunchy, Terry's mom. I thought that might be the case, but then you look at the tombstone, they don't give you a good look at, but you can make out enough to be like, I could have sworn that said Abby. And I'm like, does that mean, and it seems, they're not directly telling you whether or not it was like her illness that killed her, was it something else, but she died. And basically it's showing you the shambles that the family's basically fallen into. Everyone's just kind of like trying to live their lives, but at the same time, it's just, especially Ray, it seems like everything's just fallen apart since Abby died. Abby was the glue that kind of held things together, so it seems like from what it looks like the storytelling of the season might be like we're always going to be stuck in the present, but every once in a while we'll flash back to the past, to show you how we got to where we are. I don't know whether it was like how long it's been since season 4. Doesn't seem like it's been that long. Maybe it's been a couple weeks, maybe it's been a couple months, in the sense of like, because we saw a moment of flashback where like Ray and Abby were in the car, they were talking about things, and it was just after like basically the events of season 4's finale, and she's like, oh, we should let Mickey move in, the kids are going to move out soon enough, and he's like, what, are you fucking crazy? And then around that time, it's like Abby brings up like, oh, if he was like, Ray was like, well, if you could do anything, what would you do? She's like, oh, I'd open a bar. Well, there's a bar called Abby's. Question is, did she open that before she died, or was that something they opened as a tribute? Because it still doesn't even seem like it holds the what she wanted it to be. It's like, oh, a place for the family to get together. Seems like the only people we see really pop up there is Ray and Mickey, because she was like, oh yeah, let Bunchy work there, and you can also let Connor work there because they both need a job, but they've got their own things going on. But I'll get to that soon enough. But they ended up running into a lady almost half naked running across the road, and it causes them to crash. And at that moment, I was like, is this where she? Nope. Luckily, they survived the crash. But that's how he crosses path with Natalie, played by the lovely Lily Simmons, and it seems like it was that moment of him looking up at her on top of the cliff, and her looking down at him. Is that moment of like, yep. So in some shape or form, this is how their paths cross, and it probably like messes up his life. Usually, work doesn't always work out for his favor. In some shape or form, his work life always comes and tends to find a way to fuck up his family life. So there's a whole situation where we kind of got to see like the moment Ray discovers her, because it seems like Bridget's outside of their room crying, and Ray's like, well, what's that about? And he goes in, and that's all we see. So we don't know whether, like I said, it seems like they might be alluding to it might be the illness, but for all we know, it might have been like something work related that came. I feel like with the way that situation is, the way people acting, it seems like it was just the illness, like her cancer came back and killed her, sadly. It seems like that might be the situation, but like I said, there's a lot in between there that we really don't know. I'm hoping on everything. It seems like he's rolling in with a suitcase, so obviously it was a work situation, so he was away from home while she was sick, well, when she ultimately passed away. But then there's also the part of my brain that's like, just from the little bits I remember seeing from the commercials and somewhat from the trailers, I'm like, it seems like that situation of like, there's every so often in the season, like someone that pops up that Ray kind of has like a fling with, and I'm like, please don't tell me you are off with Natalie while your wife was dying. Please don't tell me, because it seems like she's caught up in this whole like current and present day. Some nude pictures of her leaked. Now, part of me is wondering now, and like, are those some pictures she sent to Ray? Not saying that Ray leaked them, but she sent them to Ray. People found out, turned into an ugly situation between him and Abby, because it's like, things were right on track. I've already said prior to this season even start, I was like, I can already tell, it's like, what kind of effed up situation are the Donovans going to find themselves in? And like I said, it seems like they're broken in this season. There's even a point where Ray is like talking to C. Thomas Howe. I was just so surprised. I was like, whoa. God, he's been in so much. It's hard to list, but he's just been in stuff all over the place. But then like seeing him be like, okay, Ray, like basically it seems like Ray has to take anger management by like 12 sessions of anger management kind of ordered by the court, because apparently he got drunk and him and the family had at it. and like Bridget was like telling him to stop, and she called the cops. Like he pulled out a bat. From the flashback, it looks like so far we saw Mickey and Daryl kind of getting a blunt of it, and it seemed like they would ended up going to the hospital afterwards. I mean, because the crazy thing is, we see where the family stands now. Yes, they're broken, but they still keep in contact, obviously. We see Connor's probably at some kind of military because he's like, oh yeah, I got in varsity. And he's like, have you talked to Bridget? And Ray got silent. He's just like, Connor was like, yeah, I gotta go. You know, so it's a situation where even he's having trouble talking to his dad. So, you know, it's probably just a combination of stuff that Ray did like after Abby died, before she died, like that makes the family not, I don't know. Because it seemed like the only people actively talking to him currently is like Mickey on occasion, which in fact is Mickey moved into, so that makes you wonder, like, is that because of the whole Abby situation, or is that because like Abby was like, oh, move in, you know, making that finalized, or was it just because like, oh, his son's in so much pain, he wants to be there for him? Because it seems like that's why Bunchy and Teresa came back. Bunchy in fact was actually working with Ray for a while with Daryl as well as Lena, but Lena was just like, yeah, you're messing up on the job, and he's just like, fuck you, and she's like, wait, excuse me, what did you say? And so he gets super pissed, and he's like, you know what, I'm working on being a luchador, I don't need this, I'm out. It seems like basically Daryl and Lena kind of treating him like crap. Granted, this is at the tail end of the job, so who's to say what happened during that job? It's like, why isn't he working at the bar? You know, why isn't everything gathered up at the bar like they want to? Also, Lena's like, yeah, I miss Avi, you know, have you talked to him? So it's like, so has Avi not come back since everything went down in season 4's finale? I mean, granted, you know there's going to be ramifications for that too. Like, I doubt maybe they got away scot clean. I don't know. We'll just kind of have to see. Like I say, it's going to be definitely interesting because it seems like everything that's happening is in this particular time frame of like the present day, and will flash back to the past. So that's, like I say, it's just kind of interesting because they've never done that for the show. So it's an interesting amount of storytelling. Like, we've had time skip, sure, but like your typical season stuff, but for it to start off after a time skip like that, after such a monumental thing, it's not like we're leading up to it throughout the season. And I guess in a reverse way, you can kind of think we are, because we're leading up to finding out like what happened to lead us to where we are now. So I mean, it seems like Ray might still be on good terms with Natalie, because the guy had called him up and he's like, oh, is this about Natalie? He's like, nope, it's about Sam. Played by the impeccable and amazingly talented Susan Sarandon. I kept forgetting that she was in this, and then I started seeing the commercials. I'm like, right, Susan Sarandon's in this season. That's crazy, because I forget this show has like a lot of like big time celebrities in it. That kind of catches me off guard sometimes, and I forget about that. There's even this new character Jay that pops up, played by Brian White. Just kind of a small introduction, but I'm guessing something's going to come of that. Bridget's hanging out with this dude named Jake, and she ended up calling up Ray. She's like, I've run into that boy. And he's like, what boy? She's like, you know what boy. So whatever his situation is, it seems like he was supposed to go through some operation, but he couldn't do it because he has meningitis. So it's like, did Ray cause him meningitis, or did Ray, I guess Ray kind of postpone whatever Ray's thing was, connection to this boy Jake or Smitty, whatever the situation is, he ended up causing him to like push back his operation or something like that. I guess them crossing paths or something like. I have no idea, because at first I was thinking of him as some other character. Granted, I won't say just there was a character that's popped up earlier in the series that I thought that's who it was. Maybe it is that character, but nevertheless, not going to dive too deeply into it. So it's like, what did Ray do? They kind of lead to that. And it's also kind of along the same lines for Terry, because Terry's getting married and stuff, but his fiance's brother is like, yo, obviously doesn't like Terry, probably more likely doesn't like them because they're Donovans and stuff like that. And it's like, yes, your sister knows all about me going to jail and everything. It's like, oh, but does she know about this? And it's something, it's like, oh yeah, that's not all in the past. That's pretty fairly recent, isn't it? So it's like the brother Todd is kind of a douchebag, but you can tell it's just, he just doesn't like Terry. So then he mentions like Terry ends up talking to Ray about it. He's like, yeah, what happened in Nevada? So immediately my brain goes, what happened in Nevada? In a sense of, I vaguely feel like it was something that has happened in the series. Like, I'm part of it's like, isn't that the whole thing that happened with Mickey back in season 4? Isn't that the Nevada thing? Or am I mistaken? I could have sworn that was it, because that's like very fairly recent. Or is it something else in that time frame we haven't touched on yet? I don't know. I feel like I'm being stupid. I really think it was the whole Mickey thing. If you do know, let me know, because I am a complete and utter idiot. I feel like it was that, but I could have sworn like Mickey handled that situation all on his own. I mean, granted, he had help until he got robbed, and then Ray kind of got brought in to like help mediate the situation. So, and also, since we're talking about Mickey, he's also Well, really quickly, getting back to the whole Terry thing, real quick, I want to add on the fact is that there was like a necklace he had, and I guess it was a gift from Abby to give to Terry's wife, because, well, fiance, but he's like, he doesn't feel like he deserves it, which Ray's like, no, Abby wants you to have it. He's like, no, not like this, because he lied, because she was like, don't lie, tell the truth, and he hit something so big like that, and now it's coming back to bite him in the ass. Todd is basically blackmailing him. It's like, oh yeah, can't wait for my sister to find out about this. So essentially blackmailing him. And so it's like, oh, you can't hide from all the stuff that you've done. It's like, you're too good for my sister's too good for you type of thing. So, but getting to what I was saying, we have Mickey writing a screenplay, and it's basically a fictionalized version of his life. Obviously, he changes some of the characters' names, even going as far as saying like, oh, it's a dad whose daughter gets sick. One of his 4 children, his daughter gets sick, and he's starting to rob banks to save her. It's like, oh, but Harriet is kind of there listening. It's like, oh, why don't you make it so that she survives? No one wants a bummer of a story. And it's like, oh, this and that. And then Ray's leaving. He's like, you should make it so she died. It's a lot easier to write the truth, so. It seems like also Bunchy is not going through the whole luchador thing, his name being Shamrock, but he kind of messed up the whole thing. So it's like he's telling Teresa to go on tour and he'll stay with Maria. I guess because for Bunchy, it's like he felt like, yeah, this is something I can do. I think it's a situation of Bunchy feels like there are very few things in his life that he's good at. And Teresa is kind of like, no, there's plenty of things you're good at. But for him, it's just like, this could have been his one shot, because he's kind of, I guess in his mind, he's failed at everything else. And this could have been his one shot. And it kind of fell apart. At the same time, like I said, it's like the Donovan family in general is feeling the shock of losing Abby, because Abby played a key role. Once again, she was the glue, and Mickey himself even says that she was the brightest star, and she shined light on that family that, if you want to put it in a metaphorical sense, a family of darkness. She was kind of the light, and it's just now that family's just, the light that shined on that family is gone now, so, and they're just all feeling the effects of it. I forgot to talk about the fact that Terry got his surgery to help with his Parkinson. They put like pacemakers in his head to kind of help with the whole situation, so he can almost like turn them on and turn them off to kind of help with his symptoms. So also, brought it up earlier in the episode, obviously we got introduced to Sam, and that's kind of an interesting thing too. Like, it seems like Sam is someone that's kind of caught up in the story in the past, but it's not until obviously this point, present day in the story, that Ray actually gets to meet her, because apparently it's connected to like this lady, Tom and Vicky, who used to work for her, but then they stole some files from her because of a whole thing. Vicky seems like she's played by the actress who plays Indra on the 100. I heard her voice and kind of saw her silhouette. I was like, is that her? And it's always like, lo and behold, it is her. I feel like I recognize the actor who plays Tom too. I'm not sure I can place it. But basically, they're like, yeah, you don't want to get caught up in this whole situation with her. Essentially, she wants to keep what's hers. And I thought it was kind of interesting. She told that whole metaphorical story. She was like, oh yeah, there's basically this animal, this well-known lion that killed people, and this well-known hunter came to kill this animal, this lion. But while he was waiting in wait, he had no idea that basically this lion had already killed 25 villagers, and it turns out the reason why is because to protect their goats, people brought the goats inside, but there wasn't enough room for everyone, so they would push the elderly out. That's how the lion was able to amass all those kills. So it's a situation of like, oh, Ray, what do you think the moral of the story is? And he's like, don't get old. And she's like, don't be pushed out. And so obviously reflecting on her own situation of like, they're not going to push me out, that she is, if you're going to try and push me out, I'm going to fight through tooth and nail to essentially stay in. And my essentially can think of that as her being like, yeah, I will either kick you or the goat out if I have to. I would do whatever it takes to like stay in my position. So, we can already tell from the very beginning, like, you just get the feeling like you can already tell Sam is going to be trouble. And I'm very interested to see what Susan Sarandon does with this character. Because it seems like she's going to be a bad guy in this. I'm trying to think, have I ever seen her as a bad guy or anything? It's definitely going to be interesting because, typically that's what happens in these types of situations. You can tell she's probably going to be a bad guy in this, especially since people are like, yeah, you might not ever want to meet her, so she's trouble. So she also has her stepson, George, who seems a little bit weird because he had a whole talk about the whole the Wizard of Oz and Munchkin situation, which is so interesting they would reference that. That's kind of interesting because I only just found out about that like fairly recent, the whole like orgy in the hotel like the Munchkins always having an orgy and shit. Like I never knew that was a thing. I knew the more depressing thing about like one of the actors like hanging themselves and like them having to cover it up in the movies, and like that super ass depressing thing, like I knew about that like years ago, but the whole orgy thing had no idea until fairly recently. So that was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of weird that just happened to pop up around the same time I'm learning about that too. Nevertheless, like I said, a very powerful start to the season of being like, yo, Abby's dead. It's like that super sucks. Especially because I didn't even remember this until they played it at the beginning of the preview, and she's like, yeah, like nothing can touch us. It's like, in retrospect, I was like, that's not good. And like the moment she said that line in the preview, I was like, when it was like, oh, previous on Ray Donovan, I was like, she said that? Oh God, that's literally like, yep, inviting bad juju. So it's like, I mean, I guess those words came back to bite her, which sucks, dude. It's just like, and like the whole situation is they're in the process of selling the house, but Ray just can't bring himself to do it. So I am very intrigued to see what goes down this season. It seems like it's going to be a very, very interesting story and told in a very interesting way too. I mean, the show always tells a very good story, but it seems like it's taking a different approach to it this season. So I think that's pretty interesting. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.